properly documented and given passage to move around and so on. We must look at the fundamental requirements of our nationhood. Where is that law that provided free access of nomads in West Africa to go wherever they like, however they like, in whatever form and shape they like, and do whatever they like? These are issues that we must deal with. And I think we must come to a point where we are in total agreement of what is good for everybody. Those who are affected today, those who were affected yesterday, and probably those who will be affected in the future. And I think we must look at these things holistically.
The seriousness of the matter deserves that kind of in-depth, detailed recommendations and direction. I mean, if that is the mood, I will conclude that we now ask the committee to go back, and we know the interim, go back and look at the other parts and also address some of the observation made with coming to specific recommendation, and then bring back a final report. All right, thank you.
And that's the program for this week. Another edition of the program is billed for the same time next week. I am Shegun Ojelade. Bye-bye.
You were right! You've just won 2 million.
May I have your attention for a second, please? So let's talk about an important deal. Entertainment, check. Quick cuisine, check. Magical interviews, check. Health tips, check. And great things in between. So, the deal is sealed. Your weekends are not the same without it.
Welcome to Weekend Deal.
Thank you for joining us.
Deal? Weekend Deal. Showing on the network service of NTA, Saturdays and Sunday, 6:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. Weekend Deal, Africa's biggest deal.
Information is power. Everyone wants power. So feel powerful with the NTA News mobile app, the one-stop information center. Real news at your fingertip. Be the first to report by uploading first-hand information on the You Report link, and be the first to know by simply clicking on any of the links on the sidebar for headlines, domestic and foreign news, economy, security, politics, sports, and more. Stream live on your smartphone and tablets and stay connected. It's pretty easy. Simply download NTA News app from your Google Play Store and you're good to go. NTA News mobile app, your access to real-time information.
Was there any time Nigeria was not Nigeria?
At that time, by the 1950s, principles mattered. But today, it is not principle, opportunism.
I was part of the first set of Nigerian cadets that started the Nigerian Navy.
President Buhari suspends Secretary to the Government of the Federation and Director General of the Nigerian Intelligence Agency.
Those who did not collect their PVCs before the last general election will have the opportunity to do so.
INEC to commence nationwide continuous voter registration exercise as it works towards credible elections in 2019.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo asks Nigerians to ignore those drumming for the vision of the country, says Nigeria is better off as a united and diverse nation.
Good Morning Nigeria today focuses on fishing for opportunities in the Nigerian maritime sector.
All right, now the maritime sector is believed to be the backbone of international trade and commerce, as more than 70% of world imports and exports pass through shipping.
Indeed, Claire, so strategic is the maritime sector that many nations consider it a national asset and do everything possible to harness, promote, develop, and protect it. For instance, African maritime sector is said to have a potential to generate $100 million annually if properly harnessed.
All right, Kieran, I think we should bring our discussion back home. Of course, as we all know, Nigeria has a coastline stretching 853 kilometers and inland waterways numbering 8,575 kilometers. Now, this makes it a major stakeholder for maritime activities, as of course about 60% of cargo coming to West and Central Africa ends up here in Nigeria.
Yeah, that's right, Claire, because the Nigerian maritime sector is also said to contribute about $15 billion to the nation's GDP, second only to oil and gas. Yet, this is a far cry from what experts project, going by the huge potential waiting to be tapped.
All right, now the opportunities of the maritime sector are as endless as its challenges. It is a fact that despite Nigeria's large export of crude oil and, of course, import of more than 100 million tons of general cargo, no Nigerian flagged ship is currently plying international routes. Sadly, the country is also the only oil-producing nation without a national fleet, leaving foreign vessels to take home more than $2.5 billion annually from Nigerian shores.
That's not too good for the sector. Now, it's a cocktail of missed or wasted opportunities exacerbated by multifaceted problems ranging from access to credit, financing, obsolete or ineffective laws, poor infrastructure, weak human capacity, lack of political will, and slow pace of reforms to put the sector on the right track.
Well, it's not a lost case, as so much, of course, is being done to make sure that the maritime sector is put back on track and its benefits harnessed. We've, of course, been hearing reforms going on in the port. Port decongestion, for instance, is ongoing, as the federal government just announced recently new procedures for cargo clearance that will ease delays at the ports.
Now, Claire, come to talk of it. What is the state of the inland container port project that has been in the works? How safe are Nigerian waterways or waters from pirates, illegal and unregulated fishermen? When will the much talked about dredging of the nation's waterways come to fruition? Will the dream for national shipping line ever materialize?
Questions, more questions, and more questions. And of course, you know what we do here on Good Morning Nigeria. We put them to our guests to discuss them and, of course, interrogate and prefer solutions. Also, the Conference of Association of Heads of African Maritime Administration is holding here in Abuja. And how can it help find solutions to the challenges bedeviling this sector? This is Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. I am Claire Delabo Abdurazak, and I want to welcome all of you. I know you're all waiting. This is the most watched morning show
Yes, and I am Kieran Umayo. Thanks for joining us on the flagship program of the NTA. Good morning, Nigeria. Also on the program this morning, newspaper review, business, sports, foreign entertainment news, and even the weather outlook for the rest of the day. For now, we will join Ogechi Paul for the day's news. Good morning, Ogechi.
Good morning and welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered an investigation into the allegations of violations of law and due process made against the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. David Babachir Lawal, in the award of contracts on the presidential initiative on the Northeast. The President has also directed the suspension of the SGF from office pending the outcome of investigations. In a related development, the President has ordered a full-scale investigation into the discovery of large amounts of foreign and local currencies by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in a residential apartment at Osborne Towers, Ikoyi, Lagos, over which the National Intelligence Agency has made a claim. The investigation is also to inquire into the circumstances in which the NIA came into possession of the funds, how and by whose or which authority the funds were made available to the NIA, and to establish whether or not there has been a breach of the law or security procedure in obtaining custody and use of the funds. President Buhari has also directed the suspension of the DG of the NIA, Ambassador Ayoke, pending the outcome of investigations. A three-man committee comprising of the Attorney General of the Federation, Minister of Justice, and National Security Advisor, headed by the Vice President, is to conduct both investigations. The committee is to submit its report to the President within 14 days. The most senior permanent secretary in the SGF's office and the most senior officer in the NIA are to act, respectively, during the period of investigation. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo may have begun preliminary investigations into the allegations of misconduct leveled against the suspended Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babachir David Lawal, and the Director General of the NIA, Ambassador Ayoke. SIDA's correspondent, Adamu Sambo, reports that the embattled government functionaries met the Vice President behind closed doors. Still from the State House, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says Nigeria is better off as a nation with its greatness lying in its diversity. Vice President, while receiving a delegation of the Arewa Consultative Forum, called on Nigerians to ignore those drumming for the division of the country.
We have to find the solution to the problem we're facing in this country, not only in the north and in some part of the country. We must be in peace.
Since 2001, we have intervened in so many of these ethnic, tribal, religious, and so many crises of this nature.
The presidency has commenced efforts to strengthen the mechanism of the whistleblower policy following breakthroughs in the war against corruption and unaccounted wealth. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Madam Garba Shehu, said the enthusiastic response of Nigerians to the whistleblower policy has boosted the tempo of the anti-corruption crusade of the Buhari administration. Madam Garba commended the zeal and patriotism of Nigerians for responding positively to the whistleblower incentive policy, which is intended to expose hidden looted funds. Madam Shehu explained that the huge and incredible amounts of looted funds being recovered by EFCC and the whistleblower efforts is a revelation about the mindless, callous, and reckless scale on which Nigeria had been robbed by unpatriotic and selfish public officials. The presidential spokesman also indicated that the government is getting suggestions to bring the issue of illegal weapons in the hands of citizens that are used to fuel intra- and intercommunal violence under the purview of the whistleblower policy. He assured the citizens that all recovered funds will be applied to their welfare and happiness, adding that no country can achieve progress with corruption. Nigeria has won the right to host the 61st African Meeting of Ministers of Tourism and Culture, billed for next year. Nigeria won the hosting right at the ongoing UNWTO CAF meeting holding in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
It's with all humility that I table before you Nigeria's bid to host the 61st CAF meeting in Abuja, Nigeria. As you may be aware, we are a country of almost 200 million people, rich in cultural heritage, which you will all see very soon, in colors, dances, music, languages, festivals, among others.
A crucial meeting of the Independent National Electoral Commission on the modalities and procedures for the rollout of a nationwide continuous voter registration exercise ahead of the 2019 general elections has held at the INEC headquarters, Abuja. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu met with resident electoral commissioners to gather information on availability and materials and to ensure that all necessary requirements are in place for a hitch-free exercise. Safeguarding the welfare and interests of civilians during internal security operations are core components of the Nigerian Army rules. Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Tuku Buratai said this while flagging off a security exercise codenamed Operation Harbin Kudama 2 in Pito Kaura local government area in Kaduna State.
To look critically whenever there are challenges and to avoid any form of reprisal attacks either from any of these groups.
I am happy that with this operation we are reasonably confident that the bandits that have been attacking our farmers will finally be neutralized in time for the rainy season to enable our farmers to go back to their farms.
Well, that's it is for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Claire and Kirian after this break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Establishment of this place, it has been difficult. You know, some people were even going to primary schools, secondary schools, and even outside the state for ceremonies whenever it comes up.
Before now, this place used to be a bush, cenotaph. This place used to be a hideout for armed robbers. Today, this place can compare effectively with the Ego Square in Abuja.
This is a rescue mission project. Invest in Imo. The Imo Rescue Mission. Imo must be better.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, in case you're just joining us, and you are at the right place on a Thursday morning. Now to business news. Electricity distribution companies reject federal government's plan to assess their accounts over power debts. Details on business news with Joy Uzo.
Hello and welcome to Business News. The new Africa's Pulse, a biannual analysis of the state of African economies conducted by the World Bank, indicates that economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa is rebounding in 2017 after registering the worst decline in more than 2 decades in 2016. The region is showing signs of recovery, and regional growth is projected to reach 2.6% in 2017. However, the recovery remains weak, with growth expected to rise only slightly above population growth. It pays the AMPA's efforts to boost employment and reduce poverty. Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola, the continent's largest economies, are seeing a rebound from the sharp slowdown in 2016, but the recovery has been slow due to insufficient adjustments to low commodity prices and policy uncertainty. Furthermore, most oil exporters in the Central African Economic and Monetary Community are facing economic difficulties. The latest data reveal that 7 countries, Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Kenya, Mali, Rwanda, Senegal, and Tanzania, continue to exhibit economic resilience, supported by domestic demand, posting annual growth rates above 5.4% in 2015 to 2017. These countries house nearly 27% of the region's population and account for 13% of the region's total GDP. The global economic outlook is improving and should support the recovery in the region. Africa's Pulse notes that the continent's aggregate growth is expected to rise to 3.2% in 2018 and 3.5% in 2019. Electricity distribution firms have faulted alleged plan by the federal government to escrow and centralize their revenue account over the poor market performance on their monthly performances. Such moves, the firms say, would be a nationalization of the 11 distribution companies DISCOs privatized 3 years ago. DISCOs owe 107 billion naira for services provided by 6 public-owned providers in 2016.
We want to inch closer to managing revenues of the industry. In other words, taking away the power of appropriation of the market revenues from the DISCO to a centralized system where there is equity in the way this money is shared.
Now to other countries within the continent. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says Kenya's economy grew 5.8% last year, just 5.7% growth the previous year, but still short of forecast. A recovery in tourism boosted the number, but other sectors such as farming and construction sector slowed down. The Director General of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Zachary Wangi, says the tourism sector had a remarkable recovery as it benefited from improved insecurity at the launch of the annual survey. South Africa's consumer inflation eased in March at the return of rainfall following a severe drought cut into food price inflation. The slide to 6.1% year-on-year in March from 6.3% in February bolstered the likelihood of the central bank will keep interest rates on hold despite recent shocks to currency. Finally, on business news, Nigerian stock market retracts by 0.49% to resume uptrend. Now a quick look at the graphic summary of trading figures on the floor of the exchange from Wednesday, April 19. And that does it on the business segment of the program. Thanks for watching.
And time for us to take a look at trending stories, newspaper review coming up right now.
Now, joining us to look at stories trending in today's dailies is our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyabe. Bayo, it's good to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
You're most welcome.
Good morning, Bayo. Good morning, Bayo. Good to see you.
You can take it from here, Claire.
All right, let's begin with the New Telegraph. Of course, it's quite busy this morning. But the lead story, as you probably would have guessed, Buhari hits SGF, NIA, DG. And a lot of writers there. Lawal, okay, suspended over 200 million naira contract scam and 15 billion naira recovery. Now, SGF asks, who is the presidency? Security agents bar NIADG. Oshibajo heads probe panel, Senate, Sage, lawyers applaud president, and suspension and afterthought. That's, of course, coming from Fauci. Details of this story you can find on page 4. Let's quickly take a look at the stories trending just a little below the nameplate. Meningitis outbreak. Death toll rises to 745. The story is on page 6. Now, militants say Amosun promises APC's patrol vans for security. It's on page 10. And police arrest 53 at Zaria gay wedding. Police arrest 53 at Zaria gay wedding. That's on page 9. And police swoop on militants, arrest 13 in Lagos. And above the nameplate, World Bank Forex policy hindering Nigeria's economic recovery. World Bank Forex policy hindering Nigeria's economic recovery earmarks $150 million to support country's mining sector. Now let's quickly take a look at the story, picture story, and the story, of course, trending below that. Tears as Railway Corporation demolishes houses, of course, that are on rail track at Abuja station, that's in Lagos. Now 16 varsity students beheaded in Edo cult war. Very sad. And herdsmen killed 2 policemen in Delta. Breakthrough drug can stop cancers growing and spreading. It's trending just right at the bottom or the foot of the paper. Details of that you can find on page 7. Kieran.
All right, I have blueprint here, and there's a lot to read here. Let's begin from the stories above the nameplate. From the left-hand side, police arraigned 53 for attending gay marriage. Is a very special case here, which we would like Bayo to talk about. And now also the stories just beside that, we have Oshibajo to northern leaders. Our strength is in diversity. That's the size. You can get full details of that on page 17. And just below that, 2 faint as Chanchangi laid to rest. Page 9, that's where you get that story. We learned that the man was a philanthropic. Now, police to recruit 30,000 personnel annually on page 13, still above the nameplate of Blueprint. And then the right-hand side there, NCAA probes aero contractors over aircraft smoke. That's on page 9. And now the big one there, which of course Claire read in the other newspaper, Buhari shocks Babashir, NIA boss, orders probes. And that's the writer. It's a welcome development, says the Senate. And of course, SGF embarrassment to APC government. That's SGF say it has embarrassment to the APC government by BOT member. Actually, he's saying that that behavior by the SGF is an embarrassment to the APC government BOT member. Details of that story is on page 6. And now below the picture story there, just on the foot of the Blueprint newspaper, found loot demoralizing, humiliating, confusing. That's Bishop Kuka there saying that the loot being found here and there can be demoralizing, humiliating, and confusing. And the last one is Boko Haram, 30,000 Nigerians displaced from Cameroon. The story is on page 8. At this point, we would like to bring in Bayo here.
Yes, just before we bring in Bayo, you know, you were talking about that
the gay marriage.
The gay marriage, of course, in Zaria. It's a magistrate court, you know, of course, you know, the people, they were arraigned at the magistrate court in Zaria. Okay. And of course, you know that our law prohibits.
Exactly.
Yes, and okay, let me quickly take a look at the Nigerian pilot. And the Nigerian pilot leads with same story. Buhari bows to pressure, suspends SGF NIADG. And it has a rider there, mixed reactions, trail action. And you see the 2 principal officers right there on, of course, the pictures you can find there. Now, seized $43 million. Stop entertaining Nigerians. PDP mocks EFCC. There are other stories trending at the bottom there. We will quickly go bring in Bayo here just before we continue with the rest of the stories. Bayo.
Yes, let's quickly to talk about the human aspect of it, particularly to update on meningitis. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has reported that there have been 745 deaths from meningitis so far. There have been about 330 in the last 2 weeks. However, there has been about 3,057 cases and 7,519 confirmed meningitis cases from the 8,057 cases. So far, the coordinator of the emergency activity says that vaccination is for children of ages 2 to adults of ages 29. And specifically, they are emphasizing in the first states of incubation, Zamfara and Katsina State. And the expectations are high because throughout the period of Easter, members of the rapid response team did not go on Easter break. They continue challenging meningitis. And with the vaccination going on and also preventive measures campaign going on seriously, it is expected that the meningitis will begin to go under the law. Now, the issue of suspension that has dominated all the headlines. Already, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation is supposed to hand over to the most senior permanent secretary in the office, while the DG, National Intelligence Agency, is supposed to hand over to the most senior director. Now, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation came under the suspension for contracts relating to 200 million about the Northeast contract, while the DG is foreign currencies and national currency discovered at the Kuwait. They have been mixed reactions before now. Most people have now seen the suspension as a welcome development. There were backhanded compliments earlier on that the executive clears their own, the legislators committee clears their own, and the courts also clear judges. But now, with this development, the legislature now will have to take back its words when it was saying that when it comes to the legislature, the executive use insecticides, and when it comes to members of the executive, they use deodorant. What are the implications? Now the suspensions are in conformity with public service rule. If a public officer is found, prima facie evidence indicate that there is a case for you to answer, normally you should be suspended. And this affects not only civil servants, not only public officers, but also political officers. So long as you draw your salary from the national coffers, you are a public officer and you are also affected. So,
But Bayo, you may also wish to speak to the response of the SGF. Yesterday when newsmen tried to get his reaction, and he did say he was on camera. By the way, he said, "Who is the presidency?"
No, apparently the Secretary to the Government of the Federation was not aware about the press release announcing his suspension. So when he was accosted, he apparently did not know that that information has gotten into the public.
No, but he was coming out from the villa. He was interviewed.
He was there for a briefing about it or something else. He may not have known because the information was given out by a press release signed by the special advisor to the president on media.
Well, actually, he didn't handle it well. That's just the matter. Even if he didn't know about it, that should be a more civil way of talking to the pressman. I mean, appreciate it. Well, you have your information. We'll find out later.
Well, that is your judgment. But let's go to the issue of the gate that interests both of you. It was some students that actually have been arrested, and they are all to face trial. We are currently being granted bail worth 100 million naira, and they are all supposed to give one of their blood relations among the sureties. But meanwhile, there have been other reactions about the whistle-blowing policy of the federal government. The special assistant to the president of Bidia, Garba Shehu, says that because of the success, it may now be extended to areas of arms and armament. In fact, earlier in the week, the Minister of Information has also confirmed that most Nigerians who have come out and taken advantage of whistle policy are not driven by the 2% and 5% reward, but actually they are driven by the revulsion that people could steal and by sheer nationalism and altruism. So that is very, very encouraging. Meanwhile, a court in Lagos yesterday, Justice Rilwan Aikawa, ordered that 449 million that was found in a BDC in Lagos be temporarily forfeited. And he has ordered the EFCC to make an advertisement in the newspaper, and anybody who lays claim to that should come to the court within 14 days, or else that money will be forfeited to the federal government. Meanwhile, the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto, Hassan Matthew Kuka, has condemned the EFCC and said he should stop what he has described as drama. He's asserted that if the EFCC cannot reveal the owners to Nigeria, they should keep quiet. EFCC, he advised, should work hard and recognize, identify the owners before going to the media. So those are the different strokes relating to the anti-corruption work.
All right, Bayo, we thank you very much indeed. As always, Bayo Atoyebi, of course, is our newspaper reviewer every morning on this show, Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being part of our show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's take a break and we'll be back shortly.
Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, yeah, oh Gerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with
feet are stomping and the gym is pumping. Look at the crowd is jumping. Pump up your jam and push up your hand. You know, say me fans them plenty like sun. Jump up and dance, make them understand. Say me energy could never be contraband. No matter what life throws at me, I can handle it constantly. All of my fans them invited. DJ, make my day.
make my day. Make my day. Make my day.
We appreciate the gesture, we appreciate her love, and we know that she cares about the people of Nigeria.
She wants to touch people's life, especially the less privileged, or even people who are sick in the hospital. We remember that they have a wife of the president who is very concerned about human life and humanity in general.
All right, time to start our conversation. But by the way, if you've just joined us, you're on to Good Morning Nigeria, and it's happening live right here, the network service of the NTA. The Nigerian maritime industry is said to have the potentials of overtaking the oil and gas sector in contributing to the nation's gross domestic product. Now, that's a fact. However, the sector continues to grapple with challenges that leave its potentials hugely unrealized, but at best harnessed by foreigners. Without initiatives to change this scenario, we have Oyeyemi Ajayi setting the tone for our discussion today with this background report.
For years, Nigeria depended on oil as its major revenue earner, whereby many sectors with huge potential were neglected. With a drop in global oil prices, Nigeria has seen the need to look into other sectors that have not been fully utilized despite enormous potentials. The maritime industry is one of such sectors that experts believe has potential for contributing to the nation's GDP as much as oil and gas if properly harnessed. Nigeria is a coastal state with extensive coastline and vast exclusive economic zone, a fact that makes the maritime industry very attractive for investors. Under the supervision of the Federal Ministry of Transport and its agencies, such as the Nigerian Ports Authority, NPA, Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, Nigerian Shippers Council, NSC, among others, the maritime industry has continued to undergo transformation aimed at ensuring that the nation's waters and its abundant wealth is protected and utilized for national development. With reforms to liberalize and deregulate the sector, as well as other policy initiatives such as the Cabotage Act, there have been increased level of activities in the sector, opening up opportunities for private investment in all areas of the sector, including port infrastructure, terminal facilities, vessels financing, haulage, packaging, and other logistics services. Nigeria has continued to be recognized as a leading maritime nation with enormous maritime resources and the potential to be the major hub for local and international trade in Africa. Despite this, many challenges have restrained the nation from fully taking advantage of these potentials. For now, Nigeria remains the only oil-producing nation without a national fleet, meaning there is no Nigerian flagged ship currently plying international routes. This is due to the demise of the national shipping line that once boasted of 24 ships. Also, port congestion and the lack of the implementation of the cabotage law has left most of the business of shipping in the hands of foreigners. Almost 10 years after the establishment of the Cabotage Vessel Financing Fund, nothing much has been achieved as indigenous operators continue to groan of lack of financial assistance. The new thinking is that this sector must be put back on track to give Nigeria the benefit that it has locked down for years. How to fish for opportunities in the Nigerian maritime sector is the question that experts are looking at on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you there, Oyemi Ajayi, for that report. Of course, setting the tone for this morning's discussion. Now, joining us here in the studio to discuss the issue is Dr. Dakuku Peterside, seated on my right. He's the Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Kirian, and good morning, viewers.
Now, also in the studio is Hassan Bello, Executive Secretary, Nigeria Shippers Council. It's a pleasure to have you on the show this morning.
Good morning.
All right, we'll have two other guests that will be joining us for this conversation, but let me quickly bring in Mr. Asubex. Mr. Asubex is Chairman, BOT Maritime Journalists Association of Nigeria. We're glad to have you, and it's been a while.
Good morning. I'm happy to be home.
Thank you. Kiran.
Yes, and we may have to start immediately, and the first question should be, coming to you. Dr. Dakuku Peterside, now you are reported to have expressed a passion, in growing the maritime sector for the benefit of indigenous operators and the entire nation. Now, could you give us a picture of the industry as of today?
Well, thank you very much. As of today, we're still talking about an industry with a lot of potential. We shouldn't be talking about potential. We should be talking about tangible benefits that we could derive from the industry. We're talking about potentials for a lot of reasons. Shipping, which is the core of maritime industry, there are two strands of the maritime industry. One is shipping, the other one is the blue economy. Shipping, which is the core of maritime industry, is a derived function and a service function. Two things. Derived meaning that on its own it does not produce. It exists to give service to production. What it means that something must be produced for it to be moved from one point to the other. The second aspect of it is service, which includes seaborne transportation. You can move human beings from one point to the other. That's the second aspect of shipping, which is one element. The second element, like I said, is the blue economy. It's a different thing altogether. And like I said earlier, we're still a country of potential. Why did I say we're still a country of potential? One is that we are geostrategically located. We are equidistant between the tip of West African coast and the Central African coast. So we're at the center. I can tell you a nation like Singapore exists only by transshipment because of its geopolitical and geostrategic location. That's what it does. Now, we're a country of 170 million persons. What it means is that we have human resources that we can translate to value in the industry in terms of the human element contribution. A country like Philippines has over 500,000 seafarers. They don't have as much population as we do. China, yes, may have more population. They have over 150,000 officers on board vessels. Nigeria currently do not have any officer on an international or seagoing vessel. We don't have those number of seafarers. We have less than 5 seafarers doing international voyage. We have a lot doing cabotage voyage or coastal voyage. That's another area. Now, in terms of what you call the ship graveyard, ship scrapping, there's nothing much. It is cheap labor advantage that Bangladesh, India, and all the nations that thrive on ship scrapping. we could, of course, we have cheap labor, even cheaper labor than India and Bangladesh. Yet we're not doing much in ship scrapping. We could do a lot with ship scrapping. Now, in terms of cargo, we generate more cargo than many countries in Europe. I don't know what cargo they generate in Singapore. Singapore is actually a hub for transshipment, and their GDP, the contribution of shipping and transshipment to their GDP is much more than we earn from oil. A country of 4-5 million persons. And so, if you look at the issue of, if you look at the issue of cargo, we generate a lot more cargo, either in our oil and gas industry activities, even from agricultural products, and from other sectors. Recall that I said it's a derived function. Now, again, we have so much doing in the oil and gas industry. Vessels support oil and gas industry. Now, we could take advantage of that and start the building of vessels. But there's a snag somewhere. What is the snag? Our steel and aluminum industry is not developed. If you're going to talk about building vessels, you must talk about steel and aluminum industry. The other one is power. It is power intensive, not only capital intensive. Everybody talks about the industry being capital intensive. They don't also recognize the fact that you need so much power to drive the industry. Then the technical know-how. Are we investing in training people? In many countries of the world, what is special about South Korea building vessels? Nothing. They just got the skill. They got elite power, cheap funds, supported by their government. And we think we can replicate all of those things in Nigeria. And so I've talked about potential. I've talked about the possibilities. There are endless possibilities to talk about in the industry. And so when we talk about industry, it's not about taking cargo from one point to the other. That's not just all. There's much more than that to shipping. And it's a whole gamut of services. Is it insurance? It's huge. Financing, ship financing is huge.
From your submissions,
ship management is huge.
From your submissions, you have mentioned so many potentialities here and there. You know, considering several units of what you are doing, of what the master should be doing. Now, how do we graduate or translate these potentialities into actualities? Is there any possibility of the country say, okay, fine, we may not have this or that, but we could start somewhere to see what we can do? Because depending largely on foreigners, you know, in this sector. Of course, we may not actually get to a point where we could say, yes, we have a sector that can generate as much money as we require. So what can be done?
Well, okay, sorry, Mr. DJ, I'll pause you for a moment. Just hold the break. Let me just bring in, of course, my Mr. Hassan Bello here. You've listened to the DJ talk about, you know, the whole potentials within the maritime sector. Now we have 853, you know, kilometers of coastline, you know, stretching. We also have inland waterways totaling over 8,000 kilometers, making us 60%, you know, of the cargo coming into West Africa, you know, is here on our shores. How much of our GDP is coming from the maritime sector? Are we recovering? Is the future as, you know, bright as, you know, Dr. Peter Side is painting it?
Well, I agree with Dr. Peter Side. We've been talking about potentials. Now is the time for actualization. And if you look at the whole gamut, as he said, of shipping, a lot of things that will stimulate the economy. However, I think what is needed is a deliberate, concerted action. There must be a kind of Marshall Plan, a new economic order on shipping.
What have we been able to do within, let me say, within even the tenure of Mr. Dakuko? Are we making progress?
Oh, yes, we have been making progress. Yes. There are a lot of things hands-on. If you look at the port now, the port is becoming competitive. We are actually drawing a cargo from our competitors. You know, it's whole competition. We are creating the national fleet so that Nigerians will own vessels, will manage vessels. Because as long as we don't own the means of transport itself, we'll be relying on foreigners. There will be a lot of capital flight. And as he said, it's involvement of the whole sector. How will you imagine if Nigerian insurance companies are going to insure vessels? How will you imagine what the participation of our banks in financing vessels and many other activities? We are talking about shipyards, we are talking about ship repair yards, we are talking about the national flag administration, we are talking about the whole gamut, the whole you know, range of things, which if its involvement of Nigerians will reflect the economy, it will have a massive, massive effect on Nigeria's economy.
How much vessels coming into our shores now?
We have vessels all over, but which are these vessels are owned by Nigerians, are flagged by Nigerians? That's the most important thing. Transport drives the economy. Nigeria must participate in its economy. As long as we don't have these vessels or own them, we are not actually a maritime nation. The earnings from freight itself, is huge. And I think what I will call is for government to look at that sector exceptionally, to look at that sector deliberately and take, conscious, deliberate effort to make sure that it is the source for diversification we have all been crying about.
Mr. Asubex, we're not making as much contribution to the GDP as we ought to, considering, the potentials within this sector. How much of potentials do you really see us?
You see, before I answer your question, let me just give you a little story. In 2001, the Nigerian Ports Authority sent about 11 maritime journalists on a program at the St. Thomas University in Miami, Florida. And in the course of the visit, I was the head of the team. In the course of that visit, we paid a visit to the director of the Port of Miami. And by the time I introduced all of us, this person from NTA, this from AIT, this from Radio Nigeria, and all that. So the port director was shocked that in 2001, that in the US, they didn't even have specialized maritime journalists. All they did was general beat reporters covering the sector. So I'm telling you of something of 2001 to tell you that we have been ahead. But the problem we have in this country is this. You see, look at the capacity of the persons that we have in charge of the maritime sector today, from the DG Nemasa to Hassan Bello and to Adisa in MPA. If we give them enough time, the turnout of CEOs is huge. And then the inconsistencies in the policies. Today you come out with one thing and you don't come out, you are talking about something different. Now then, leave that aside. We have these two major bills that have been in the National Assembly for a very long time. The Transport Commission Bill and the Ports and Harbour Bill. And so when you don't have a consistent policy, the way of doing things, people are talking about diversion of cargo from Nigeria to the neighboring ports. 90% of the cargo that we see in the neighboring ports, at the end of the day, find their way into Nigeria. So what is the problem? And that is why we will commend Mr. President for this, this thing about the ease of doing business in Nigeria. Because it costs so much, the cost of doing business at Nigerian ports is so huge. Look at Apapa Port, for instance. Between Festac and Apapa or Tinkan, it can take you 2 hours to get there. So these are the challenges that we have. And then the synergy we are looking at. Synergy between customs, MPA, Nimasa, Nigeria Ports Authority, it's not there. So we are looking for a situation where, from the comfort of your home.
Yes. We'll stop here. We'll return to you in a short while, just as we also return to Dakuku. Now, but before we do that, from our Lagos studio, we now have Mr. Chris Asoluka, Managing Director, FM&T Consulting Group. Good to have you on the show this morning, Mr. Asoluka.
Yeah, good morning.
I believe you must have heard from your colleagues here in the studio with reference to what could be done to, of course, make the maritime sector a workable sector that Nigeria can be proud of. Now, take a look at the entire sector and give us your view of all the potentialities that we've talked about and the way forward.
For too long, we've been talking about potential. I think we should be past that stage. And some of us have talked about maritime ad nauseam in terms of the development of the maritime sector. Dr. Dakuku is there, and he knows the potential in terms of when you talk of the coastal line, when you talk about the market, when you talk about the yacht population. But there are proxies to measure maritime development in any country. And these proxies, you are talking about the fleet tonnage. How much of the fleet, how much tonnage do we control? how many ships, how many shipyards, how many ship repairs, apart from that ship registration. And when you talk about ownership, you are talking about money, you are talking about shipbuilding, and you are talking about the market. Nigeria looks good, but I would wish that we talk more about how do we potentiate, how do we actualize these potentials. And for some of us, I think the last point made by Asobex is quite germane. In my PhD thesis, I studied the turnover of the chief executives in this maritime sector. It's too high, and that kind of, you spend 1 year and you are removed. It does not make for any consistency, and it does not send any serious signal that Nigeria is yet to be serious in terms of developing the maritime potential.
Thank you indeed, Claire.
Yes, just let me stay with Mr. Suluka. Mr. Suluka, you were very, very pessimistic in that statement that you granted, about the future of the maritime sector. Indeed, you talked about a whole lot about structure. Can you tell us more, and why you really don't see that the maritime sector has a bright future?
I've told you in terms of the recursiveness of policy, 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. I've told you about the high turnover rates of the chief executives in these focal maritime agencies. When you talk about the NIMASA, you talk about the Shippers Council, you talk about MPA, you talk about NIWA and all this. If the turnover, like in let us take NIMASA, from birth in 1987, you had Dr. Ekong. From Dr. Ekong, you had about 3 other before Jafaru in 1992. From Jafaru to Ago, you had about 3 other people. From Ago to Inform, you had 3 other people. From Fong to Dr. Dosumu, then to my friend Ramaseyi, and then to Apollo Bolokemi. And now you have Dr. Dakuku, who I must confess looks quite serious, and he seems to have mastered the beat to the extent that some of us are even amazed that he has understood the maritime sector to an extent that we will be shocked. After 1 year, 2 years is removed. After 1 year, 2 years, Bello Hassan is removed. This kind of thing does not make for coherence. It does not make for stability. And this is the kind of thing we are arguing about. Give a longer tenure to these people and reduce the political influence. Because if maritime chief executives will spend 80% of their time in Abuja answering to the National Assembly, answering to the ministry, answering to the presidency, I don't see how much the time they have to attend to the critical maritime sector which they are to, cater for. And this kind of recursiveness and unseriousness would not put Nigeria in good light. Look at this conference. Nobody is talking about the Abuja Declaration of 2007. That was where this idea of having a kind of cooperative platform where the African maritime administrations should come together, bond together, look at freight. Freight worldwide is about 6% of trade, but African trade is about 13%, which means it puts the African shipper in a very, very uncompetitive state. Because anything you are importing or exporting, 13% of that is accounted for by freight. How would Nigerians compete? By shippers, we don't mean ship owners. We mean importers and exporters. And when you talk about shipping per se, look at the Nigerian Ports Authority. By the time we did the concessioning, the idea, and I mean, when I took National Assembly to Netherlands, in order to study what we mean by landlord port, we thought by now the Nigerian port, especially at Apapa, will be a hub of some sort. But we have not gone too far. Bex has told you about the land problems and constraints. We have told you about the multiplicity of agencies at the port. All these things don't make for trade facilitation. And all these things don't, they don't encourage tonnage to Nigeria. So the issue of, let us, like the optimists will say, begin to believe that from today, with people who are serious at the helm of affairs, they should be given some time in order to actualize some of the policies they have.
Just before I leave you, you talked about, some of those leaders or the leadership lacking capacity, knowledge capacity, and you also talked about elongating their tenure. So how do you reconcile the fact that you don't have leaders in the maritime sector who have the capacity to deal with the issues, and then having them stay there on and on and on?
You've misunderstood me. In terms of, let us take them one by one. I've known Bello Hassan at the Shippers Council. Well, if anybody tells you that Bello is not knowledgeable in issues of shippers' interests, that person is an outsider in the maritime sector. If anybody tells you that having met Dakuku, I didn't know him that much, we were not in the house together. But having talked with him, I was impressed at the graphs within so short a time. And I saw his vision. My prayer has been, would this man be given time in order to actualize some of these visions? In terms of being at NIMASA, for instance, the focal problem, why NIMASA was created in 1987 was shipping development. By 2007, when we had the NIMASA bill, which some of us pushed through, you saw that even the Jomalik function, which was the labor function, NIMASA took the flag state control function in terms of registration, in terms of regulating labor, as well as safety, as well as the maritime environment and that kind of thing. It's not what we are talking about. What we are talking about is this high turnover in the personnel at the management level, at the leadership level. 1, 2, this kind of distraction that 80% of their time, instead of staying around the maritime area to tackle the issues that are in Abuja, all these things don't tend to give us a serious look in terms of maritime development.
Thank you, Mr. Chris Asolika, for your submissions. We may return to you in the course of this program. You have really shown knowledge, great knowledge of the sector. And now we return to you, Dr. Peter Side. He's mentioned your name several times in his submission, meaning that you are the man at the center of the whole show. Now, so it's become clear now that maritime sector in Nigeria, like in many parts of Africa, is yet to develop local capacity. In fact, you recently lamented the dominance of foreigners, in this sector. Now, where will this scenario change, and what will lead to a change?
Well, thank you very much, Kieran. Now, if you talk about the development of local capacity, it's multidimensional. Local capacity in terms of fleet, and that's key. The major asset you need in the industry is the vessel itself, the ship. Now you could have ocean-going vessel and coastal vessels, what we call the cabotage vessels. Now, we recognize as a fact that we do not have Nigerian flag ocean-going vessels, and that has placed us at a disadvantage, because there are benefits derivable from owning a Nigerian flag or Nigerian flag ocean-going vessels. And government has decided to intervene. What is that intervention? Government is facilitating the setting up of a national fleet, not a national shipping line. Why am I distinguishing between a national shipping line and a national fleet? In the 70s, early 70s and late 80s, many countries, especially African countries and a few Asian countries, set up national shipping lines owned by their governments, managed by their governments. But it's always been known that government is not the best manager of private investment and all of that, and it's proven over and over again. So what the government of Nigeria is doing, coordinated by the Federal Ministry of Transportation, which is of course our supervisory ministry, is to put together stakeholders to pool funds and facilitate the process of setting up a national fleet. These will be Nigerian flag vessels that will come with the benefits derivable from owning your own flag vessels. They will be given the right of first refusal for offtake of our cargo. Of course, you know that they will keep our insurance firms busy, our financing firms busy. They will create employment for our people. They will create wealth for our people. Of course, talk about national pride and the security implications of having Nigerians take your cargo. Of course, there are multiple benefits. So in the area of capacity building, that's one area, and that's government intervention. Another area is those who man the vessels, seafarers, masters, mariners. Now, we also recognize as a fact that it's unfortunate that we do not have seafarers. Government again decided to intervene in what is called the Nigerian Seafarers Development Program by looking for young men and women who are passionate, who have the prerequisite qualification, sending them to the centers of excellence of marine training around the world to go get this knowledge and skill. That is another intervention to build capacity. Now, the other important thing is the issue of local infrastructure. You have seen the reforms, the massive reforms that is going on in the ports, but we're taking it a step further. It's not enough. Yes, he talked about landlord ports, or ports owned and managed by different entities. Now, we're looking at the model again. Recently, the Federal Executive Council approved a firm called Compliance Consulting Limited to look at the issue of the port reforms and look at some aspects of port reforms and the reforms, the extensive reforms that was done under President Obasanjo. They are now looking at it again. We could do further reforms in the ports. Ultimately, what we are looking at, we are targeting efficiency and effectiveness so that our ports can be competitive, just like Barrister Hassan Bello said, so that our ports can be competitive. We are not ignorant of the fact that we don't only own ports, our ports are in competition with other ports for cargo. For business, for transactions. And so we're looking at it again. What can we do to improve efficiency of our ports? What can we do to improve our rating of ease of doing business so that many cargo will end up in Nigeria, not only ending up in neighboring countries and find their way into the country, let them actually end up in Nigerian ports.
At what stage are we now with the issue of the national carrier? Now,
the issue of national fleet, I'm happy that Barrister Hassan Bello is here. He's in better position to inform us. Whereas NIMASA has responsibility for shipping promotion. NIMASA has responsibility for regulatory function of the industry, has promotional function of the industry, and of course in added responsibilities, regulating the cabotage or enforcing the cabotage regime. We're doing all of that. But of course, the ES of Shippers Council, knowledgeable as the lawyer, has got investment background.
Why not go there straight?
Let's bring him there.
But I thought we're still on with the issue of capacity building. But if you insist, I will ask.
It's a conversation, we'll get back to you. But since you raised that issue, he's the right person to take on that question. So let's go to him on the issue of national fleet.
The talk has been on for a long time.
Yes, the national fleet is one of the policy thrusts of having indigenous or Nigerians take part in ownership and control and management, of shipping. The committee has been set up to look at the national fleet. As Dr. Dekuku Peter Said has said, there was a mistake which was made, which collapsed the Nigerian national shipping line. It was a government-owned, government-controlled, shipping line. And the government, as he said, is not the best business organizer or promoter of such ventures. So what we have now is a national fleet which is going to be driven by the private sector. The government is to facilitate. Already an MOU has been signed with Nigerian government with a company in Singapore, PIL. They will have the PIL as a technical partner, will have 60%, or 40% of the equity. Nigerians will have 60%. And this has been structured in such a way that we have massive participation of Nigerians, in that. It is a three-dimensional things. We'll have a cabotage, regional cabotage vessels. We'll have a dry cargo, which is container and bulk. And then we'll have also tankers, because Nigerians must carry, their crude. But there are a lot of policies that must be changed. You just don't say you are bringing national fleet and it takes off tomorrow. What about the FOB, CIF policy? Nigeria is one of the countries where we just sell our crude oil, we don't care.
When will this be completed? Because we've been hearing about national fleets, national carriers, it's been the talk about...
And not only when will it be completed, you've just told us you've signed an MOU on this. Now, is there any architecture put in place to ensure that Nigeria is not shortchanged?
No,
Remember
Nigeria is
that
not
in the
shortchanged.
past we have concessioned so many,
Yes.
federal government or public-owned enterprises.
Yes, this one is not a concession. This is a partnership.
It's a partnership.
This is a partnership, and it will be realized. But steps must be taken, and we have to be deliberate so that the mistakes of the past will not be repeated. You know, we are talking with NNPC, for example. NNPC is developing a shipping company, and the National Fleet Implementation Committee is talking with NNPC, and very soon we'll come out with a larger picture. What we need is participation of our indigenous people, but the government will play just a role of a catalyst. The government will not spend a kobo in this national fleet. It will only be the catalyst for that. And so very soon we'll come out with the model we have, the architecture, as you said, and I'm sure this will be realizable. Very soon.
Kilian, there's something I needed to conclude. It's very important about the issue of capacity building. If you have your people man vessels, and you don't have your people own vessels, and so when you talk about capacity building, you're talking about the human element. You're also going to talk about the capacity of your people to acquire vessels and manage vessels. That's another big gap there. We also, before now, by reason of the vision of our forebears, the National Assembly passed an act creating the cabotage vessel financing fund. The idea behind the cabotage vessel is to empower Nigerians, to support Nigerians to own vessels, both cabotage vessels and ocean-going vessels, with particular emphasis and focus on coastal vessels, cabotage vessels. That's another area we need to build capacity. And Nigerians owning vessels, yes, are they owning enough to dominate the industry? No. So they need added support to build added value.
From whom?
And from whom? From their government.
Yes, from their government.
And currently, the CVFF is government's best opportunity to intervene to support the local people build capacity on vessels. If we have total control of our cabotage trade, the value derivative can only be imagined. And so we're looking at that seriously. How come, and so many persons in the industry will gauge you, how come since the passage of the Cabotage Act in 2003, the CVFF has never been disbursed? And we're bringing that to focus right now.
Exactly.
And we want to ensure that before the end of this year, we'll have made advanced progress in disbursement of the CVFF.
Exactly.
Yes,
and let me just say that you need a lot of support, for the fleet you are going to. Ship repair, shipbuilding yet. If, for example, you have a national fleet, it will not exist in the vacuum. You wouldn't have, you take your ship to Singapore for repairs, for example, while you can do it in Nigeria. And then we're talking about manning, employment of Nigerians, to man these ships, master mariners, cadets, and what have you. So there are a lot of supporting services that must be strengthened in order to have a sustainable, fleet. And all these things have been worked out.
But ship owners have been complaining about this CBFF, that the NIMASA has not been forthcoming because they feel that for over 10 years, not a couple, not a dime, like I said, has been disbursed. And so, what are the challenges?
But do they have the capacity to be able to disburse the requirements? Because there must be requirements before you can access the
Sure. It's left for the NIMASA to bring out those.
You see, it's also good to put it in picture that NIMASA do not have the power of approval for disbursement of CVFF. But we are engaging everybody who is in authority, who has authority to take one action or the other. And I can tell you that the results are heartwarming.
Okay, now let's go to Asubek. Now let's get this point cleared. Just yesterday, the Presidential and the Enabling Business Environment Council announced that henceforth all containers coming into the country are to be privatized. So to what extent will this help increase efficiency at the port?
No, I didn't get that.
I don't know. Now, the Presidential and Enabling Business Environment, PEBEC, announced that henceforth all containers coming into the country are to be privatized. We want to know what that means.
I don't think it doesn't make any sense
in the industry.
There's nothing like.
Let me just comment.
Maybe
privatize the container is to put it in the case the cargo.
No, okay, that's pallet.
Yes,
Pallet, is it
not
privatization?
Not privatized.
Yes, it's pallet.
Palletized.
Yes. That's what he meant.
Okay.
It's not privatized, it's pallet.
You see, the problem we still have here is this. We keep talking about these inconsistencies. You know, government cannot wake up every morning and be saying, from tomorrow, this is what you want to do. From next tomorrow, you want to do. This is shipping. Maritime is international. And so whatever policy you are making here in Nigeria is going to affect Europe, it's going to affect Russia, it's going to affect China. And so when we are coming out with these policies, we make sure that we are in consonant with what happens globally. There's the WTO, and all that. So we as a nation cannot just wake up one morning and begin to roll out policies like that. And then one other thing that, luckily the DG is here, this issue of, seafarers. We have a lot of our students who are abroad that were sent, for some training sponsored by the MASA. And so now there's a mandatory 1 year on board training that they should do.
Yeah, the sea time.
Personally, I've been receiving calls almost on a daily basis for this opportunity. Without them, whatever they went to learn there is useless. Okay, so these are the issues that we think that the master should also address. And then secondly, this issue of Maritime Academy, Maritime University, we don't have enough. In fact, the public hearing at the Senate the other day over this establishment of the Maritime University in Okerenkoko and then Oron. In fact, there's no reason why every state in the Niger Delta should not have a maritime university. We are on that one.
DJ, how do you respond to the issues that he has raised?
Well, he has raised two issues.
Should we have maritime, universities in all the states of the federation?
May not be universities, but we don't have enough institutions. That's it.
We have always been consistent on our position concerning Maritime University. We support the establishment of Maritime University in Nigeria. I think that answers the question. Yes. Now, the other issue is the issue of our young men and women who were sent abroad or still are sent, as many of them are still outside the country studying, and the need to provide them sea time berths, because if you don't provide them sea time berths, their education is incomplete. They do not have the professional license to practice, and so you would have wasted resources by sending them out without them earning the necessary COC, Certificate of Competency, needed for them to truly go on board vessels and derive benefits and earn the benefits from sending them abroad. We are tackling the issue head on. We understand that is key, is strategic to us, it's very important, very critical. And the challenge we have had for some time is the Nigerian procurement process. It could be very cumbersome. We thought it's something we could find a way around in a matter of months, but it's dragged on for months. But one assurance I can give is that it is an issue of priority attention. We're giving it top priority focus, and we will definitely provide seat time for our people. If we don't, we'll have wasted resources, we would have wasted their time, we would have wasted opportunity, but most importantly, we would have wasted value that would have been added to the industry.
All right, let's bring in Mr. Chris Asoloka here. Mr. Chris Asoloka, you've listened to the conversation. What is your perspective? Let me take you back to the issue of the cabotage vessel financing, finance funding, and of course the role of shippers. What do you think? How do you think we can, build the capacity of our ship owners to be able to access the fund? Because since it's been there, it's just generating interest, of course, for the financial institutions.
So the unfortunate thing is that most times we are in a hurry to discuss serious policies. And in terms of discussing maritime, in terms of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that wouldn't do. The CVFF was a construct inserted in order to encourage fleet ownership. And the Cabotage Act was a deliberate departure from the National Shipping Policy Act of 1987 in order to have a homegrown industry that would develop and be strong enough to compete regionally before it now goes on international trade. And to facilitate that, there was a provision for cabotage vessel financing fund, which was to be administered at the NMA then, now NIMASA. The cuckoo was dry because most times the approving authority is beyond the NIMASA. It's a presidential stuff. And in terms of articulation of our interests, I would also see that most times our ship owning, say, entrepreneurs, they tend to think that shipping is based on handout. It's not handout. It's a serious business. And they have to come together and discuss on the modalities. Now, the issue is when you ask NIMASA, how much do we have in this fund? Some say $127 million, some say it's more than that. But when that one was conceived, it was not conceived to provide all the funds. It was conceived to have a kind of seed capital and structure a number of financing stuff. The NIMASA can easily use that as a starting point and offer guarantees. Like in America, you don't give people money to go and start looking for where to buy ships. The American, what we call MARAN, the equivalent of NIMASA, they will merely guarantee that up to 80% of the fund of the ship, if purchased in America, will be guaranteed by that agency. What does that mean? That means that with one policy, you are jump-starting the shipbuilding capacity, ship repairs, not giving them money to go to Europe, to go to Asia, and start shopping for where they can acquire cabotage vessel. So in terms of CVFF, yes, it was designed to provide seed capital in order to address and provide a window of opportunities for our potential ship owners in Nigeria to know how they will be supported in order to reduce the cost of shipping. After all, in America's developed as it is, we have what we call cost differential subsidy. We have operating differential subsidy. These things are to take into account the uncompetitiveness of that sector, and that sector needs to be guided in a way to encourage nationals. So when you talk about cabotage, yes, when we did cabotage, we were looking at Jones Act of 1922 in America, but to contextualize it to solve the Nigerian problem. CVFF, Asubex is right. Everybody is saying what is happening to that fund. And Dakuku, if he says that is one of the issues he will take up, it will be, he will make his name if he does that. But let it not end as a note of caution. Like the former Ship Acquisition and Shipbuilding Fund, SACSBF, where people thought that it was their own share of the national cake. I'm saying this and you'll be wondering because I've done a lot of studies in these areas where such well-conceived policies were abused. In terms of CVFF, it was just to provide a seed money, show everybody that we are very serious in terms of funding our prospective ship owners. And when you talk about CVFF, of course, I did the guideline. You talk about PLI, right? You talk about the responsibilities of the banks, and you talk about the responsibilities of those who want to apply to have access to that fund. Like I said before, it's this question of inconsistencies, because nice policies have been developed, but any new administration would want to give its own signature on such policies. And we do hope that this present crop of administrators try them. If they fail, we will shout and ask for their removal. But so far that they have seen that they have some kind of roadmap and they are sure where they want to go, I think all we have to do, we will rally around them and give them the best support we can. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Asoluka, you were talking about time. I hope you had a great time, expressing yourself and your feelings about the sector. Now, let's return to Abuja here. And Mr. Hassan Bello, the Nigerian Shippers Council has been at the forefront of establishing inland container depots or, dry ports meant to provide shipping services to those in the hinterlands. Now, 6 areas in the country mapped out for the project. What is the story so far?
The story is delivering shipping services, to vast shippers in the hinterland. We don't need to have also only the seaports. We have ports, dry ports in Isialanga, for example. We have one in Ibadan. We have one in Kano, in Kaduna, in Funtua, and in Jos. Now, these have been concessioned to the private sector already. And the private sector are, churning out policies. Construction in Jos, for example, has reached about 70%. Kaduna is already a port of origin and a port of destination, which means you can consign cargo from China to Kaduna directly. And the Kaduna port is a custom port. It's been recognized by FIATA about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So people in Kaduna and all the axes need not to go to the seaport in Lagos or Port Harcourt to clear their goods. They will sit down in Kaduna and receive their goods. It's a port for all the paraphernalia of ports. Everybody will be there. The customs, NDLA, all other agencies that are supposed to be in the ports will be in.
Are they effective?
Yes, they are effective. We have started receiving containers there. Now,
but we need to, the rails have to work for that to be effective.
It has to depend on rail, and rail is there are rail, provisions. Nigerian rail is carrying boxes, to Kaduna right now. We need to see the effect on the economy, of Kaduna and virus. But even more important, the dry ports are to stimulate export, and export is another source of diversification. We believe that there is an import economy, but Nigeria should import less and export more. That is also another issue altogether, which I think you should highlight in your future programs. So these dry ports are significantly important in the economy. They will reduce the cost of doing business and also the ease of doing business, in which case we don't have the congestions at the port. We don't need all the trucks coming from Kaduna to go to Lagos to bring goods. And then, of course, as I said, it will be a consolidation center. Industries will be set around a cluster of industries along those dry ports, and this will reduce transportation costs and I think stimulate the economy.
Mr. Asubek said that there's no doubt about the value that the ICDs will bring, of course, to the sector. But the challenge that people have observed is that how effective will that be if we are still having transport infrastructure that are still at a deplorable state?
Yes, so before we go that, I want us to use this opportunity. Thank God the ES of Shippers Council is here, the DG of the Massa is here. There's this craze by some state governments to build ports, and they are putting so much resources. Akwa Ibom wants to build a deep sea port, Cross River wants to build a deep sea port, Bayelsa wants to build a deep sea port, Gelegele in Edo State, they want to. So the question we ask is, there has to be a synergy. How have we utilized the ones in Lagos? I'm not saying that, you cannot, but we must be very careful here. He talked about the issue.
What is the challenge in that?
The challenge here is that the Nigerian ports, our ports right now are not utilized to optimum. And so anybody who is talking about building a port in Calabar or Uyo or in Gelegele or Bayelsa.
So we keep talking about congestion, decongesting the Lagos River ports.
No. The issue of congestion in Lagos, let me tell you, what we need to do, like I said, explained earlier, the issue of ease of doing business. It's not because we don't have the capacity. That is not the issue. It's not about capacity. It's the issue of ease of doing business. And then you also look at, in other climes, you don't have to go physically to the post or a custom long room to do your transaction. The customs will have to work in synergy with the Nigerian Ports Authority, with the Shippers Council, with NIMASA, all these agencies. And so we are talking here, most times you invite people for seminars like this, for talk shows like this, you hardly see the customs, they come up. They think that they are another part of government entirely, which is not right. And so all these things we are doing, if we don't bring the customs in, it won't work. It won't work. Use resources that should be used for other resources. Basic infrastructure have been deployed by some state governments. And I think that this Buhari administration must call some of these state governments to order.
Are you saying there's no benefit in doing that? You were talking about congestion in Lagos. We're talking about that the capacity is there, but the congestion persists.
Where we are, I'm coming to my ears, where we are saying that now that we are talking about, yes, it's talking about the issue of export. And so if we are now trying to say, for instance, we look at an area like Cross River, if they have banana, and then if you are building a port, you know, to make sure that you can export large quantity of banana, things like that could be understood. But we have this craze by state governments, and so much money, you know, a port development, so much money is pumping. Even the Akwa Ibom deep sea port, understand that government gave them a billion naira.
Yes, what we are saying is it is necessary to have deep sea ports. You know, our ports that we have now are mostly river ports. So they are very difficult to maintain in dredging, you know, capital dredging, maintenance dredging, and so on. But deep sea ports, you know, for the economies of scale will bring, you know, bigger vessels with a lot of, you know, cargo. You know, so that will even have to do with the transportation, the cost. It will lessen the ports.
Exactly.
But what we are saying is, must we have the duplication of these ports everywhere? That is another issue altogether. How viable are they? Because a port is viable, as how much cargo it can attract. You know, but there is no doubt about it. It is important for us to have deep sea port. The ports in
Calabar, for instance, the one in Calabar,
yes.
we keep dredging and dredging. The money the MPA spends in dredging Calabar port, I don't think they
can intervene and help without holding brief for MPA. You are aware that MPA has commissioned a port development master plan. One component of the port development master plan is the feasibility of ports, of prospective ports. And by that study, at the end of that study, the prospective ports that will not be very viable will be stopped. And so MPA will only authorize ports that are viable or that are potentially viable. So that study is on, and of course the MD of MPA is very serious about it. She's very focused on that.
Okay, Didi, just before we come to the conference that's holding today in Abuja, let's talk about the Gulf of Guinea, you know, and sea piracy. There's been some quietness coming from that area. We've not heard of stories of pirate activities and all that. What has happened?
Well, a lot has happened in terms of sea piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. But I'll just tell you 4 important things that have happened. One is that the navies of all the countries have set up a cooperative and collaborative platform where they share information and where they do joint patrol and joint response. That's one of the things, and that has indeed led to improvement in terms of pirates activities and maritime crime generally in the Gulf of Guinea. Now, the other one is that we have stepped up in intelligence gathering. The Nigerian Navy has set up what is called the Falcon Eye. NIMASA has its own satellite surveillance system. And we do not only have that surveillance system in place. We have, Nigeria is host of the Regional Maritime Coordination Center, the ROMCC. And so, in addition to our own intelligence system, we have intelligence system of neighboring countries, and we are in the process of integrating most intelligence systems so that whatever is happening within the exclusive economic zone of Ghana, you can see it from Nigeria if you authorize, if you have access to our surveillance system. And so we have a bird's eye view of our entire maritime domain. So sitting at the naval headquarters, looking at the Falcon Eye maritime domain awareness asset, you can see clearly, you can see a bird's eye view of what's going on within our maritime domain. So no matter what you have, whether you put off your AIS or not, we could spot what is going on. If there's any suspicious movement, we're likely to go after you. So that's the second thing. And so is that we have paid a bit more attention on intelligence gathering. The third thing is that we have also tweaked a bit the legal framework for prosecution of those who are involved in maritime crime. From our own end, Nigeria is moving ahead to get a dedicated anti-piracy bill. It's in progress right now. Many other countries too, we are encouraging them to have the right legal framework to fight piracy. But you know, we keep confusing piracy from sea robbery and other crimes. Piracy is when it occurs on the high seas, that's when it's piracy. When it occurs inland, It's armed robbery, sea robbery, one other crime or the other. It could be kidnapping, crime.
Yeah.
But we keep confusing it. We are actually not the prime location of piracy all along. We've always had maritime crime, but not good enough. We're not saying that's good, but we keep confusing with piracy. If you talk about piracy, the Strait of Malacca, the Gulf of Aden, those are the real centers of the hotspots of piracy. And so that we have also done. Then another important thing we have done is the joint patrol and joint cooperative initiatives that we have done within our own region, both in West Africa and Central Africa. We have some form of coordination from Abuja MOU. We have cooperation with the International Maritime Bureau based in Malaysia. And so if anything happens here, you get response from all the countries, not just here. Very often, maritime crime do not necessarily occur in one country and end in one country. It can start in Nigeria and off the coast of Lome. And so it must get cooperation from Lome too. So we're all working together. It is even one of the issues in focus as we converge to that 34 countries of Africa converge under the banner of Association of African Maritime Administrators. So that. But finally, is the fact that so that has contributed to reduction of piracy. And the president recently approved what is called a presidential initiative on a new maritime security infrastructure and architecture. We're going to have a new approach to the fighting maritime crime and piracy.
That's wonderful. Let's quickly pause you a while. We've got some reactions from
yes. And I have here Festus Akimboyewa. He said government should set up working groups to address all the issues facing Nigeria's maritime sector, including skills, marketing, exports, and strategy.
All right, and Mahmoud Haman tweets, what happened to the Nigeria shipping line that had a fleet of 24 ships? Those who killed it and inherited its property are still alive.
All right, and from Eno Ayuk, the sector has the potential of generating revenue for states and, of course, the employment opportunities. But unfortunately, Nigeria has not invested much in the sector.
And Ahmed Ghana tweets, the reason why the maritime sector is not working in Nigeria is because our local capacity in the sector is mediocre.
All right, and from Chris Simeon, he says government should make policy that promotes indigenous operators in the sector, thereby reducing expat rates.
And Festus Akiboyewa tweets again, government should invest in Nigeria's ports to enhance infrastructure and equipment needed to meet the needs of the 21st century maritime environment.
And this is another funny one from Tunde Emmanuel. He said, having a port populated with other nations' ships is like marrying a wife for someone else to impregnate her. It is most unfortunate.
All right, Dele Jack Solomon tweets, my distinguished moderators, apart from terminal operation, another area of investment is in fleet acquisition and export processing.
Okay, now,
it continues. So some of the major challenges include poor port infrastructures, inadequate funding, government policies, and inadequate manpower.
Now, another one from Festus Akimboyewa says it's the job of the maritime sector to ensure Nigeria is open for business. Sadly, there's nothing to be proud of in this sector, and he says that this is the time to act. Okay. This is a good morning. I just have another one.
Yes, we just have just quickly now. Still from Festus Akigmoyewa, of course, bearing his mind. Problem is Nigeria's maritime sector lacks expertise and experience because there is no drive and determination to make the sector work. We can only have a dynamic, innovative, and high-quality maritime sector in Nigeria when there is closer working relationship between government and industry. And those are the tweets that have come in, of course, making their own contributions to our conversation, fishing for opportunities in the maritime sector. We take a quick short break. When we come back, of course, we'll be looking at the conference holding today in Abuja.
Kidney and liver issues are on the rise. Why?
This is monstrous. It's even woman's dross.
Charlatans peddle drugs on the streets as if it is pure water. Why?
I was not new.
Enterprise is for money, not assured and quality service. Why?
My dear sweet professor, am I trying to you so?
Oh, yes. Episode 10, Season 3 of your rib-cracking comedy. Professor John Bull takes a swipe at the scourge of substandard goods in our society.
Fake suppliers of products must be brought to justice before they create a calamitous atrocity in our community.
Keep a date with us and laugh like never before.
Electric bomb!
Showing at 8:30 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday on NTA Network International and Star Times.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
Welcome to the new speed of life.
NTA Television College Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, has maintained her reputation of putting together courses that are highly relevant to manpower needs of the broadcast industry. The college has put together 3 core courses for 4 weeks on computer networking for television for the engineers in the broadcast industry. Date 17th April to 12th May 2017. Registration fee 80,000 naira with accommodation. Also, a 4 weeks course on English grammar and pronunciation for broadcasters, presenters, scriptwriters, news editors, journalists, and master compares. Date 22nd May to 16th June 2017. Registration fee 80,000 naira with accommodation. TV College also has a 4 weeks course on specialized reporting to cater for those that want to learn the skills of reporting from judiciary, crime, conflict zones, environment, business, natural disasters, politics, and health. The course will teach you the ways to write and handle stories with peculiar situations. Registration fee 80,000 naira with accommodation. Date 19th June to 14th July 2017. Venue of all courses will take place at NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos. For more inquiries, contact us on 0806 980 9807 0703 660 7155 or email us at ntacollege@gmail.com. NTA Television College, Jos, training you to be the best you can be.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. We're still talking the maritime sector, and we'd like to inform you that today there is a conference that's just starting, a 2-day conference actually, by the Association of African Maritime Administrators, which means many African countries are part of that conference. And of course, the theme of that conference is sustainable use of African oceans and seas. Dr. Dakuku will tell us more about this.
Well, thank you very much. 34 African countries are gathering in Abuja or have gathered in Abuja for the first time. All of them maritime administrations, administrators, stakeholders, ship owners, ship registrars, and shippers council from 33 plus Nigeria, 34 different countries. Shipping, as you know, is an international business. Ships don't move from one locality to the other. They're huge investments. And as Africans, we are bothered that we account for only 5% of seaborne trade globally. That's not good enough. Of the 54 countries in Africa, 38 are littoral states or island states. And so that's a huge advantage which we have not optimized. We have not even explored talking of optimizing. Aside from that, we generate a lot of cargo in Africa, yet we don't have African flagged vessels. In recognition of the potential that the maritime sector offers, African heads of state gathered in Addis Ababa in 2013 to endorse what is called Agenda 2063, 7 points aspirations which Africans intend to accomplish by the year 2063 to transform the economies of Africa. 1 year before then, African leaders gathered to also endorse what is called the Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy, AMS 2050, how Africa intends to tackle maritime crime. And just recently, African leaders gathered in Lomé, in Togo, to endorse the African Charter on Maritime Security, Safety, and Development. All of these documents, earlier, the African government had already passed what is called the African Charter on Maritime Transport. All these documents goes to show the importance African leaders attach to maritime sector. They realize that maritime sector could be a driver of economic growth in the continent.
So specifically speaking,
and to address, to operationalize all these resolutions of African leaders are their maritime administrators and maritime regulatory agencies. To give effect to all of these things, the leaders decided many years ago to come together to form an umbrella body of all maritime administrations in the continent of Africa. It started, before it was given a name, it started in Nigeria at some point, in Ghana, meetings were held, then it was formalized in Kenya in 2012, in Mombasa, Kenya, where the Association of African Maritime Administrations were formed, after which there was another meeting in Sandton in South Africa in 2013. By 2014, the meeting was supposed to take place in Nigeria, but suddenly there was an outbreak of Ebola, so the conference didn't hold. And immediately after then, of course, IMO started putting us under pressure until it was decided that Nigeria will host the conference this year. So this is the first time Nigeria will be hosting all maritime administration in Africa.
Quickly speak to the value, yes. The value it's likely to bring on...
for Nigeria. Yes, it's going to bring a lot of values for Nigeria. One, it's going to raise Nigeria's profile within the maritime community. And many will ask, if you raise Nigeria's profile, so what? One of the many other benefits of raising Nigeria's profile is that it could give us a seat on IMO Council. Currently, Nigeria is not on IMO Council. If with a new profile, high reputation, we could be elected to IMO Council where decisions concerning the maritime world is made. The other one is that it's likely to attract investment to our country, especially from multilateral and bilateral agencies. Many of them are participating. That's also important. It's going to give us an internal motivation to focus on the industry. Right now, the industry is in focus in Nigeria. For these past few days and weeks, the country is in focus. So that's another benefit of hosting the conference. It's going to give us internal motivation to focus on what maritime can do for us. This convention is holding because the whole country is agog with the issue of maritime industry. Now, of course, it's going to, like I said, it's going to attract long-term and short-term investments. It's going to bring Nigeria under focus. A lot of people are coming for the Congress, are in for the Congress. You know, we have people from Jamaica, they're in here. We have people from Netherlands. It's an African team, but you have people from Netherlands, you have people from Denmark, you have people from many countries in Europe already in the country for the conference.
All right, DJ, we'll just pause because we have just less than 3 minutes to conclude our discussion. So let's have inputs from all other guests very briefly. Kiran, you want to get to...
Yes, I want to get to Chris Asoluka. You have listened to the DG Nimasa, what he had to say concerning the conference, starting today in Abuja, here. What, in your opinion, having a long-time experience in this sector, will Nigeria gain from this? And again, you could also briefly talk about the unauthorized and arbitrary charges and levies on the consumers of shipping services in the country.
Well, in addition to what Dakuku said, Nigeria cannot claim to be a strong regional player in terms of the African region if Nigeria does not lend its support to any kind of institution that would project the interests of Africa. So to that extent, if Kenya hosted 2012, then I know that the Secretariat is in South Africa. It's high time Nigeria played a significant role. And also the actualization of this association, of course, there will be many derivatives that would fall from the table. The intra-African trade and the intra-African cooperation, the issues of harmonization and collaboration in shipping policy. I do know that some critics could say, is this a rehash of UNCTAD 4, where they clamor for the new international economic order in order to begin to give African nations a greater bite. And we know the resistance of the EU, especially when it came to the 40-40-20. And I think Kazan would understand 40-40-20, meaning for any trade taking place between two countries, each party should have 40% control of the cargo, while the cross traders would be given 20. I know that was stoutly protested against by EU, and that marked the beginning of failure of the former enemy. So to a large extent, this attitude for Africans to begin to collaborate, to begin to meet, Nigeria has a responsibility if we're an African regional power, not only sitting on IMO. If Nigeria is a good player in African continent, it will also give a kind of impetus to our pursuit to go to the Security Council of the UN. But Nigeria is too significant a country in Africa for it to resort to what we call the free riders mindset. That is, you allow others foot the bill and you take advantage of whatever comes from the organization. It's high time Nigeria played a significant role. And to that extent, and in addition to what Dakuku enumerated, he expects. But I would also think that there will be a concerted effort in order to make advantage or take advantage of this kind of awareness. Let it not be a flash in the pan after the conference. In the next 6 months, nothing is out of the conference.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for your contributions. Well, talking from the point of knowledge, we'd like to thank you again, Mr. Chris Asoluka, the Managing Director, FM&T Consulting Group. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Claire.
Yes, okay. Let's get the views of course, Asubex quickly. Your final thoughts on this conference?
Yes. Well, when this idea of AMA came, I was kind of taken aback because in the year 2014, I'd sent a proposal to the then Minister of Transport for an African Maritime Award. That is an award that will recognize each and every sector, taking them region by region. And so if we have such a thing, I'm sure that if the organizers of this thing look at it, so we want to see how we can use this to encourage the sectoral players in maritime administration. And that's my own contribution. I want the organizers to look at this because we have a blueprint that incidentally, I'm just telling you, I get to his ED Finance to pass to him, yes, so we can look at that.
I think it's instructive.
We'll give you an invoice at the end of the program.
The conference is instructive. It shows the role Nigeria is playing regionally. And it goes towards the maritime domain awareness on issues of safety, security, environment, and most importantly, the economy.
Very important.
We have to reflect on that. And that's what we have been calling concerted, deliberate effort to see what is the maritime domain and how can we, it's not just the presence of the domain, but how can we exploit, domain to also contribute to the GDP.
All right, Hassan Bello, Executive Secretary, Nigeria Shippers Council, thank you very much. We would also like to appreciate Asubex, Chairman, BOT Maritime Journalists Association of Nigeria, thank you. And of course, the last but certainly not the least, Dr. Dakuku Peter Said, Director General of Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, thank you. And we do wish you a successful conference. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Kirian. Let me use this opportunity to invite you, indeed, all Nigerians. This is a moment of honor for our country. This is one of our finest moments in terms of the maritime industry. All Nigerians have a responsibility to take part in this program. The Vice President will be there in person. Several ministers will be there in person.
We should have time for all that, right? So please, we are hoping that Nigeria will get something out of it. Now, yesterday, the quarter-final stage of the UEFA Championship went down and other sporting activities. So now let's get more from our sports desk.